Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this really 14th and possibly 15th installment on the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the story of the disappearance of Lord Krishna. So appropriately, I'm wearing black, but my shirt says mantra. Can you see that? Yeah, mantra. Does anybody know the Maha mantra? You know what that mantra is? Chant with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Before every program, we also chant this mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So I'll say my pranams to my spiritual master, and then we'll begin reading. Nama Om Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhaktale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devim Gaurivani Parachadani Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschachari Shitarani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garidhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is there's quite a bit of ground to cover here. I'm not sure how much we're going to get done tonight, but we're going to give it our best shot. But I want to go back into the 13th chapter to text, text 38, and just kind of go over a little bit and bring us up to date on this new chapter, okay? So you might remember Dhritarashtra had left home, Vidura had given him good instruction, this and that. As a matter of fact, everybody had left, and Sanjaya was speaking, and Yudhisthira, he said, oh, Maharaj Yudhisthira said, oh, godly personalities, talking to Narada Muni. He said, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can find my ascetic aunt who is grief-stricken by the loss of her sons. This is all after the Battle of Kurukshetra. And he says, you are like a captain of a ship in the great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus addressed, the godly personality Devarshi Narada, greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. So he says in text 41, Sri Narada said, O pious king, do not lament for anyone, for everyone is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all living beings and their leaders carry on worship to be well protected. It is he only who brings them together and disperses them. As a cow bound through the nose by a long rope is conditioned, so also human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions and are conditioned to obey the orders of the Supreme. Not in Kali Yuga so much, but previously. O king, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle, or the material body to be perishable, or everything to exist in the impersonal absolute truth, or everything to be an inexplicable combination of matter and spirit, feelings of separation are due only to the illusory affection and nothing more. Therefore, give up your anxiety due to ignorance of the self. You're now thinking of how they, who are helpless poor creatures, will exist without you. This gross material body made of 5 elements is already under the control of eternal time, kala, action, karma, and the modes of material nature, guna. How then can it, being already in the jaws of the serpent, protect others? Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the 4-legged. The weak are the substance of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is the food of another. Therefore, O king, you should look to the Supreme Lord only, who is one without a second, and who manifests himself by different energies, and is both within and without. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, in the guise of all-devouring time, Kala Rupa, has now descended to the earth to eliminate the envious from the world. The Lord has already performed his duties to help the demigods, and he is awaiting the rest. You Pandavas may wait as long as the Lord is here on the earth. So they've already gone. Everybody's already gone. So then the last, and we'll just skip through this because it talks about Dhritarashtra going and his wife going, and they're performing Ashtanga yoga and all of the austerities that they would be, and then they would give up their body in a state of samadhi or God consciousness. So having spoken thus, the great sage Narada, along with his Veena, ascended into outer space. Yudhisthira kept his instructions in his heart, and so was able to get rid of all lamentations. So these instructions that we're receiving from great souls like Narada Muni, the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually will help us to overcome all lamentation. As a matter of fact, we're going to be conditioned by a state of bliss. Now, bliss is not just happiness. Bliss is an internal feeling of literally ecstasy, of security, of peace, of tranquility, of knowing that God has got your back in all circumstances because you've given yourself to the Lord. So it is a feeling of security and protection, and it gives courage that we would not otherwise find within ourselves. So this chapter 14, is the disappearance of Lord Krishna. And it's a very, very powerful and profound chapter that we're going to be reading. And we'll go around. I'll read a little bit more because there's a lot of verses here, and then we'll start sharing it, okay? So chapter 14, the disappearance of Lord Krishna, text 1. Sri Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna went to Dwarka to see Lord Sri Krishna and other friends, and also to learn from the Lord of his next activities. A few months passed, and Arjuna did not return. Maharaj Yudhisthira then began to observe some inauspicious omens, which were fearful in themselves. He saw that the direction of eternal time had changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful. Sounds familiar, huh? And he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. I think we see that too. All ordinary transactions and dealings became polluted with cheating, even between friends. And in familial affairs, there was always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers and between brothers. Even between husband and wife, there was always strain and quarrel. In course of time, it had come to pass that the people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride, etc. And Maharaj Yudhisthira, observing all these omens, spoke to his younger brother. Maharaj Yudhisthira said to his younger brother, Bhimasen, I sent Arjuna to Dwarka to meet his friend and to learn from the personality of Godhead Krishna of his program of work. Since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not know factually how things are going there. Is he going to quit his earthly pastimes, as Devarshanardi indicated? Has that time already arrived? From him only, all of our kingly opulence, good wives, lives, progeny, control over our subjects, victory over our enemies, and future accommodations in higher planets have all become possible. All this is due to his causeless mercy upon us. Just see, O man with a tiger's strength, how many miseries due to celestial influences, earthly reactions, and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by deluding our intelligence. The left side of my body, my thighs, arms, and eyes are all quivering again and again. I'm having heart palpitations due to fear. All this indicates undesirable happenings. Just see, O Bhima, how the she-jackal cries at the rising sun and vomits fire, and how the dogs barks at me fearlessly. Don't forget to mute, everybody. O Bhima, saying a tiger amongst men, how useful animals like cows are passing me on my left side, and lower animals like the asses are circumambulating me. My horses appear to weep upon seeing me. Just see, this pigeon is like a messenger of death. The shrieks of the owls and their rival crows make my heart tremble. It appears that they want to make a void of the whole universe. Just see how the smoke encircles the sky. It appears that the earth and the mountains are throbbing just to hear the cloudless thunder and see the bolts from the blue. The wind blows violently, blasting dust everywhere and creating darkness. Clouds are raining everywhere with bloody disasters. The rays of the sun are declining, and the stars appear to be fighting amongst themselves. Confused living entities appear to be ablaze and weeping. Rivers, tributaries, ponds, reservoirs, and the mind are all perturbed. Butter no longer ignites fire. What is this extraordinary time? What is going to happen? The calves do not suck the teats of the cows, nor do the cows give milk. They are standing crying, tears in their eyes, and the bulls take no pleasure in the pasturing grounds. The deities seem to be crying in the temple, lamenting and perspiring. They seem about to leave. All the cities, villages, towns, gardens, mines, and hermitage are now devoid of beauty and bereft of all happiness. I do not know what sort of calamities are now awaiting us. I think that all these earthly disturbances indicate some greater loss to the good fortune of the world. The world was fortunate to have been marked with the footprints of the lotus feet of the Lord. These signs indicate that this will no longer be. O Brahmana Sonika, while Maharaj Yudhisthira, observing the inauspicious signs of the earth at that time, was thinking to himself, Arjuna came back from the city of the Yadus, Dwarka. When he bowed at his feet, the king saw that his dejection was unprecedented. His head was down, and tears glided from his lotus eyes. Seeing Arjuna pale due to heartfelt anxieties, the king, remembering the indications of the sage Narada, questioned him in the midst of friends. Okay, Rangavati, would you like to pick up?
Maharaj Yudhisthira said, my dear brother, please tell me whether our friends and relatives such as Madhu, Bhoja, Dasaha, Satvata, and Haka, and the members of the Yadu family are all passing their days in happiness. Is my respectable grandfather, Surasena, in a happy mood? And are my maternal uncles, Vasudeva and his younger brothers, all doing well? His 7 wives, headed by Devaki, are all sisters. Are they and their sons and daughter-in-law all happy? Are Ugrasena, whose son was the mischievous Kamsa, and his younger brother still living? Are Ridika and his son Kurtavama happy? Are Akrura, Jayanta, Gada, Sarana, and Satrujit all happy? How is Balaram, the personality of Godhead and the protector of devotees? How is Pradumna, the great general of the Varshini family? Is he happy? And is Aniruddha, the plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead, faring well? Are all the chieftain sons of Lord Krishna, such as Susena, Charadeshna, Samba, the son of Jambavati, and Rishabha, along with their sons, all doing well? Also, Shrutadev, Uddhava, and others, Nanda, Sunanda, and other leaders of liberated souls who were constant companions of the Lord are protected by Lord Balaram and Krishna? Are they all doing well in their respective functions? Do they, who are eternally bound in friendship with us, remember our welfare? Is Lord Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives pleasure to the cows, the senses, and the brahmanas, who is very affectionate towards his devotees, enjoying the pious assembly at Dwarkapuri, surrounded by friends? The original personality of Godhead, the enjoyer, and Balaram, the primeval Lord Ananta, are staying in the ocean of the Yadu dynasty for the welfare, protection, and general progress of the entire universe. And the members of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of the Lord, are enjoying life like the residents of the spiritual sky, simply by administering comforts at the lotus feet of the Lord, which is the most important of all services. The queens of Dwarka, headed by Satyabhama, induced the Lord to conquer the demigods. Thus the queens enjoy things which are prerogatives of the wives of the controller of thunderbolts. The great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of Lord Sri Krishna, always remain fearless in every respect, and therefore their feet trample over the Sudama assembly house, which the best demigods deserved, but which was taken away from them. My brother Arjuna, please tell me whether your health is all right. You appear to have lost your bodily luster. Is this due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay at Dwarka? Has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? Could you not give charity to one who asked? Or could you not keep your promise to someone? You are always the protector of the deserving living beings, such as brahmanas, children, cows, women, and the diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character? Or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? Have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? Have you committed some unpardonable mistake which is considerable to be abominable? Or is it that you are feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Oh, my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for you becoming so dejected. Okay, so that was the end of 14.
Okay, all right. So we're going to go to 15 now. Well, we got plenty of time left to do some more reading. This chapter goes directly into the same concept. I mean, it's just really a continuation of this chapter in a way, but it does talk about the whole Pandava family retiring in a timely way. So this chapter is called The Pandavas Retire Timely. And this is, of course, after Vidura had come back and given instruction that he had gotten to Dhritarashtra, who left home. And now everyone is departing after the pastimes of this great battle of Kurukshetra. So does anybody would like to pick it up there for a moment? Does anybody else want to read something? Chapter 15, The Pandavas Retire Timely, text 1. Anybody want to grab it? If not, I'm going to let Rangavati keep going, because she's doing good. All right, read a few more then, Rangavati.
Okay. Suta Goswami said, Arjuna, the celebrated friend of Lord Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna over and above all Maharaja Yudhishthir's speculative inquiries. Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. Therefore, his body lost all luster. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. Remembering Lord Krishna and his well-wishes, benefactions, intimate familial relations, and his chariot driving, Arjuna, overwhelmed and breathing very heavily, began to speak. Arjuna said, "O kin, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. I have just lost him whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void, like bodies without life. Only by his merciful strength was I able to vanquish all the lusty princes assembled at the palace of King Draupad for the selection of the bridegroom. With my bow and arrow, I could pierce the fish target and thereby gain the hand of Draupadi. Because he was near me, it was possible for me to conquer with great dexterity the powerful king of heaven, Indradev, along with his demigod associates, and thus enable the fire god to devastate the Khandava forest. And only by his grace was the demon named Maya saved from the blazing Khandava forest. And thus we could build our assembly house of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of Rajasuya Yajna and paid you tributes. Your respectful younger brother, who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace Jarasandha, whose feet were worshipped by many kings. These kings had been brought for sacrifice in Jarasandha's Mahabharata Yajna, but they were thus released. Later, they paid tribute to your majesty. It was he only who loosened the hair of all the wives of the miscreants, who dared to open the cluster of your queen's hair, which had been nicely dressed and sanctified for the great Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. At that time, she fell down at the feet of Lord Krishna with tears in her eyes. During our exile, the Vasa Muni, who eats with his 10,000 disciples, intrigued with our enemies to put us in dangerous trouble. At that time, he, Lord Krishna, simply by accepting the remnants of food, saved us. By his accepting food thus, the assembly of Munis, while bathing in the river, felt sumptuously fed, and all the three worlds were also satisfied. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of God, Lord Shiva, and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya. Thus he, Lord Shiva, became pleased with me and awarded me his own weapon. Other demigods were also delivered their respective weapons to me, and in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body and was allowed a half-elevated seat. When I stayed for some days as a guest in the heavenly planets, all the heavenly demigods, including King Indradev, took shelter of my arms, which were marked with the Gandiva bow, to kill the demon named Nivata Kavacha. O king, descendant of Ajamidha, at the present moment, I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influences I was so powerful. The military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences, and thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I, seated on the chariot, was able to cross over it. And only by his grace was I able to regain the cows and also collect by force many helmets of the kings, which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who in the battlefield withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas, headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Salya, Shaula, etc. Their arrangement was expert and more than adequate, but he, Lord Sri Krishna, while going forward, did all this. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Bharishrava, Sushama, Shaulya, Jayadrath, and Balika all directed their inconceivable weapons against me. But by his, Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Nrsimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him.
Okay. All right, I'll read a little bit.
Okay.
Unless somebody else wants some. Anybody else raise your hand if you want, or you can read next time. So this is text 17. It was by his mercy only that my enemies neglected to kill me when I descended from my chariot to get water for my thirsty horses. And it was due to my lack of esteem for my Lord that I dared engage him as my chariot driver, for he is worshipped and offered services by the best men to attain salvation. O king, his jokings and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses unto me as, O son of Prita, O friend, O son of the Kuru dynasty, and all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. Generally, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit, and loiter together. And at that time of advertising oneself for acts of chivalry, sometimes, if there were any irregularity, I used to reproach him by saying, my friend, you are very truthful. Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he, being the supreme soul, used to tolerate all of those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son. O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I've been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. I have the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrows, the same chariot drawn by the same horses, and I use them as the same Arjun, to whom all the kings offered their due respects. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them, at a moment's notice, have become null and void. It is exactly like offering clarified butter on the ashes, accumulating money with a magic wand, or sowing seeds on barren land. O king, since you have asked me about our friends and relatives in the city of Dwarka, I will inform you that all of them were cursed by the Brahmanas, and as a result, they all became intoxicated with wine made of putrefied rice and fought amongst themselves with sticks, not even recognizing one another. Now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. Factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and other times they protect one another. O king, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the supreme personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker, and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Sutta Goswami said, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and freed from all material contamination. Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. Because of the Lord's pastimes and activities, and because of his absence, it appeared that Arjuna forgot the instructions left by the personality of Godhead, but factually, this was not the case. And again, he became Lord of his senses. Because of his possessing spiritual assets, the doubts of duality were completely cut off. Thus, he was freed from the three modes of material nature and placed in transcendence. There was no longer any chance of his becoming entangled in birth and death, for he was freed from material form. Upon hearing of the Lord Krishna's return to his abode, and upon understanding the end of the Yadu dynasty's earthly manifestation, Maharaj Yudhisthira decided to go back home, back to Godhead. Kunti, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of the transcendental personality of Godhead with full attention, and thus gained release from the course of material existence. The Supreme Unborn, Lord Sri Krishna, caused the members of the dynasty, the Yadu dynasty, to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. When the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, left the earth, this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. Maharaj Yudhisthira was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence throughout the capital, stayed home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home, and he dressed accordingly. Thereafter, in the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned his grandson, who was trained and equally qualified as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the seas. Then he posted Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, grandson of Lord Krishna, at Mathura as the king of Surasena. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhisthira performed a Prajapatya sacrifice and placed himself in himself the fire for quitting household life. Maharaj Yudhisthira at once relinquished all of his garments, belt, and ornaments of the royal order, and became completely disinterested and unattached to everything. Then he amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, then the mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the five elements, and his body into death. Then, as pure self, he became free from the material conception of life, thus annihilating the gross body of five elements into three qualitative modes of material nature. He merged them into one nescience, and then absorbed that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. After that, Maharaj Yudhisthira dressed himself in torn clothing, gave up eating all solid foods, voluntarily became dumb, and let his hair hang loose. All this combined to make him look like an urchin or a madman with no occupation. He did not depend on his brothers for anything, and just like a deaf man, he heard nothing. He then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men, to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he lived in that way wherever he went. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhisthira observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected by irreligious practice. Therefore, they decided to follow in the footsteps of their elder brother. They had all performed all of the principles of religion, and as a result, rightly decided that the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate on the Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material concept of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attain that abode in their very same bodies. Self-same bodies. Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhas. Because he was absorbed in the thought of Krishna, he was received by the denizens of Pitraloka planet, where he returned to his original post. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husbands. The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life, back to Godhead, is fully auspicious and is perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. Wow. Wow.
I have to agree. Wow.
Yeah. What an epic. What an epic. It's unbelievable. Has anybody got any comment or elucidation or?
That was a very powerful reading, Gayatri. I mean, seriously powerful verses.
Oh man. Yeah, this is actually hard to hear. It's actually very difficult for us to hear about the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Because, it said, Prabhupada one time said, they said, how should we feel after your departure? He said, you should feel this emotional suffering and this pain and this longing. He wrote a prayer about his spiritual master on the day of his disappearance. And if you've never read that prayer, you should definitely read it, because he was saying all is vacant in the world, all is void. And the suffering that we experience is transcendental when it's connected to transcendental personalities. One of the things that sticks out in my mind here is that all of these personalities went back to the spiritual world or to their original post, but the ones who went to the spiritual world went in their self-same bodies. They went in their self-same bodies. So their bodies were completely spiritual. And we have a hard time understanding that, right? Because we see the body of 5 elements, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then the other 24 elements or whatever, 25 elements that we're made of that then become dust or ash or whatever it may become, right? So, but these souls had actually come for these past times. They'd actually come here to be with Krishna for these past times. The demigods themselves took birth in the world to enjoy these pastimes with Krishna. It's all for sport. It's all for rasa. It's all for pleasure. It's all for enjoyment. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, right? So a Rishikesh, he enjoys everything. He enjoys everything that happens. And this is all a big play that the Lord has created for the purpose of our dream. We're in a dream. Actually, it says the soul never leaves the spiritual sky. The soul is always in the spiritual sky. But we, at some point, we actually force Krishna, Prabhupada says. We force him to come to this material world to try to enjoy and become the supreme controller ourselves. We want to compete with the supreme personality of whom everything is expanded from, including us. That never works out. And ultimately, what happens is we become frustrated. We become whipped by the material energy. Even these great kings like Yudhisthira and Arjuna and Bhima, all of them, they all left for the mountains, giving up all concept of material life. And what did Yudhisthira do? He left his palace. He took off all of his crown, threw it aside, took out all of his jewelry and ornaments. He took off his arraignments and his clothes and his cloak and everything and dropped them. He was naked and put on old cloth. And then he left for the forest without looking back. This is renunciation by great holy saintly kings whose bodies were completely, their mind, their body, everything about them had completely become spiritualized. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says there's really nothing left because the offering of itself is of a spiritual nature, and it's burned up in the fire of that absolution because it's being offered to Krishna. So there's nothing material left. There's nothing material left. When Prabhupada said you are not this body, what that means is that the soul is just riding in this encasement like a machine. It says the soul is seated on the body just like someone would be seated on the chariot. They've got the five senses and the minds pulling them in all directions. And they think if they can satisfy those senses until the end of life, that is the only goal of existence. This is also stated by Krishna in the chapter Divine Demoniac. You can find that those persons who think that the only goal of life is sex life, is enjoying the senses until the end of time, more and more and more and more money, more wealth, more possessions, more house, more women, more car, more everything. They think that will do the trick. But Prabhupada said it's like putting wood on a fire. Will the fire go out? No, it blazes higher and higher. So that we're burned up in this mode of passion. Passion is like a blazing fire. It's like a fire. We're burning with these desires in the material world. They're unlimited. And we become their servants. We become the servant of the mind. And we become drug around just like an ordinary dog. If you look at it, like I was in Vrindavan, okay? And those dogs there, man, they've had it rough, okay? Those dogs are starved to death in Vrindavan, but yet they're running everywhere. They see another she-dog, they run. Or like a monkey, we're running from tree to tree thinking, oh, if I could just enjoy this, if I could enjoy that, finally I'll be happy. But no one is happy. Everyone is frustrated. Everyone has experienced frustration. And what comes from frustration? Anger. Everyone is angry. Everyone is violent. And we just heard this in this, where he described this, these omens that were coming. He was seeing these omens. And he was saying that there are seasonal irregularities, right? That people have become very greedy, very angry and deceitful, that you couldn't trust anyone. And he saw that they had adopted foul means of livelihood. Could you imagine? So even ordinary dealings were filled up and polluted with cheating, even amongst friends or family members, between fathers and mothers and sons, even between husband and wife. There's always strain and quarrel. Now, this is the symptom of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the winter age of mankind, okay? Satya Yuga is the spring, right? Treta Yuga is the summer. Dwapara Yuga is the fall. And Kali Yuga is the age of darkness, or the winter age of mankind, an age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And we see that Yudhisthira saw these omens. He understood that this was coming. In time, it came to pass that the people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride, right? So he observed these omens, and he spoke to his younger brother. He told him, he said, look, I sent Arjuna to find out what's going on in Dwarka. He hadn't been back. It's been over 7 months. Where'd he go? Something bad has happened. So he believes, because Narada had already insinuated that Krishna was wrapping up his earthly pastimes. He had fulfilled his mission here. And what was his mission? Yada yadahi dharmasha, glanir bhavati bharata, bhutanami dharmasha, tadatmanam srijam yaham, right? Prutyanaya sadanam, vinashaya chaduskritam, right? To eliminate from the earth the envious, impious rascals, the demons that are weighting the earth down, and to reestablish sadhunam, the spiritual personalities. So he was wrapping up his pastimes on the earth and was getting ready to leave, and everybody else was leaving with him at this point, right? So Nardi had mentioned that. And then he goes on, Yudhisthira says that all of his opulences, all of his wealth, all of his power, all came from Krishna. Arjuna says that in the next chapter. He goes through a very detailed study of activities in his life. You can read in the Mahabharata. You can read all these activities of Arjuna. They're in the Puranas. They're there. They're histories. This is not mythology. This is not some fiction. These are actual histories of the world. These personalities existed. These lives existed. The stories of their life are so important. There's no way that we can understand the importance of these great sages who set the example for us so that we can understand how to go back home, back to Godhead like they did. That we don't have to stay in a world filled with birth, death, old age, and disease. That we don't have to suffer and go on in this world again and again on a razor's edge where catastrophe could happen at any moment and is happening at any moment, right? And when they talk about quarrel, not only amongst family, look at most families are broken apart, especially over money, over greed, right? They get broken apart just like that in this age of Kali. Husband and wife, what do we see? Divorce rates in the 70 percentile range. Most people now are been married for the third, fourth time, still not happy. What's the problem? Maybe it's them. Maybe they need to look inside their own heart and soul. All of us do. We need to look inside and find that enemy. We need to realize that the enemy is not out here. The enemy is in here. And until we address our own demons and our own ghost in the closet, until we bring them out into the light of day, and until we beat them with shoes. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta said. We get up in the morning, we take our shoes and we beat our head with it. Why? Because the mind is always going everywhere, restless. Krishna says the mind is restless. And it's like a cloud driven by the wind. We can't even concentrate for a moment in time. Very, very difficult to control the mind. Krishna recommends it. He said, yes, it's very difficult. Arjuna says he thinks it's impossible. But Krishna said, no, it's possible with the right method. So what is the right method? Well, it used to be different in different yugas, right? Great temple worship, great sacrifices like that, meditation, Ashtanga yoga in the mountains like that, whatever that might be. But in the age of Kali, right? Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatirati taha. The way to control the mind in this age is by incessantly calling on the name of God, continuously, without cessation. And one can do that simply by getting locked in a melody with the holy names of God and singing that. It's just like a melody that's stuck in the mind. Many times we have these hackneyed static songs that we hear about some love life in the world that failed or whatever it might be. And these songs get stuck in our brain, right? And I wish I could get that song out of my head. But this is a song you want to sing for all your life. This is a song that you want to have as an endless loop going on in your mind. I'm recommending you go online and Google kirtan and enter kirtan, because kirtan is the safest place in all the three worlds. When you associate with God, you associate with the power of God. God is in his name. Nam namakati bahuda nijasarva shaktish. That means he's put all his power in his name. And anyone can chant. Doesn't matter you're sinful. Okay, chant anyway. Doesn't matter you have all material desire. Okay, chant anyway. Right? Oh, it doesn't matter that you're inattentive. Chant anyway. Maybe you'll become attentive. Right? Whatever your offense is to the holy name, chant it away. By all means, continue to chant and never give up calling on God's name. In the Bible, it says that anyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. It's not a question. It's not like maybe you'll be saved. You will be saved. God will come for you. He hears your call. He's waiting for your call. He's been waiting for your call for trillions of lifetimes, and you're lost here trying to enjoy some broken glass when he's offering the greatest diamond. Right? How satisfied are we when we come to our deathbed and we look back and we think, wow, where did this get me? Without Krishna in the picture, without it bringing you to love of God, it's a waste of time. They say the breathing is like the bellows in a blacksmith shop. It has no function except for more incriminating karmic reaction that we will get. So he says, how many miseries due to the celestial influences, earthly reactions, and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by diluting our intelligence. And he goes on to say that the left side of his body is quivering, his eye is quivering, right? He's having heart palpitations due to fear. This is King Yudhisthira saying these things. Do you think King Yudhisthira is afraid of anyone? No, he's never been afraid of anyone. But he's afraid because Krishna is leaving, and he realizes that Krishna is the life of his life, the soul of his soul, the master of his senses, of his life, and he has dedicated everything to the Lord. Now he's going off to the forest, to meditate solely on Lord Sri Krishna. Was there a question? I saw somebody's hand up. So, but he goes on and he says, the wind blows violently, blasting dust everywhere, creating darkness. Clouds are raining everywhere with bloody disasters. So when God is leaving, it looks like the stars themselves were fighting. The rivers, the ponds, the reservoirs, the mind, everything is perturbed because everything is dependent on Krishna for its maintenance, right? We know we got Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Vishnu is maintenance. Everything is being maintained. Now the maintainer of all these things is leaving the earth. So he says that the deities in the temple seem to actually be crying and are about to leave. Could you imagine this? This is what Yudhisthira felt. And he felt that everything was devoid of beauty and bereft of all happiness. That's how he felt. So this is transcendental separation. This is desirable separation. This type of attachment is desirable. Just like it said a minute ago that these things are due to illusion only when they're not connected to Krishna. There's two kinds of Maya, Yoga Maya, Maha Maya. Maha Maya is in the material world. Yoga Maya is a spiritual illusion that we can enter for the pastimes and the pleasure of Sri Krishna in that rasa. So he says that these signs indicate that the Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will no longer be amongst us, that he is leaving. So he saw that Arjuna, it says his dejection was unprecedented. His dejection is unprecedented. His head was bowed down low, and tears were falling from his eyes at the thought of being without his friend. This is the feeling that we want. These are the desires that we aspire for. This is the example. This is the path that has already been trodden by pure devotees. Just like he said, he followed, as he left, he followed in the footsteps of his ancestors who had also gone to the mountain and given up these things before the time of death. You can try to hold on to it, but you can't keep it. You're in a house that's burning down. The fire and the flames, they're all around. So why would you set up shop here? Oh, I need a bigger house. Why? So it can burn brighter? I mean, think about our situation. It's really not a very pleasant circumstance to come to the material world and find out the reality, that we have to lose it all. We have to lose all the ones that we love. This is not negativism. This is motivation in a positive spiritual way. Some people say the devotees are negative. We're not negative. We're calling a spade a spade. This looks like the spiritual world, but it's not. Okay? It's not. You can't live forever here. You don't know where you're going next. You don't know how you got here. You don't know anything. What you need to do is take the spiritual master, right? Tadvidi pranipratena pariparasnena sevya. So what you want to do is you want to approach the spiritual master. You want to learn. You want to inquire submissively. You want to render service to the spiritual master. Spiritual master has seen the truth. He can impart the truth to you. Why go around blindly when you have the perfect roadmap right here in the Srimad Bhagavatam with these great pure devotees who went back to the spiritual world in their self-same body? These are pure devotees. These are not the people that Moses and Abraham are talking to when they're saying, don't molest don't steal, don't rape, don't lie, don't cheat. These things he didn't have to hear. He was born free from all of that. Never had that in his life. So when we think about this situation, there's one text here that I do want to, let's run to the next one. Okay, we'll run on to the next one, to the next chapter. Okay, so in the next chapter, where it says the Pandavas retire timely. By the way, are there any questions or any thoughts that you want to share? Okay.
Purple Gayatri.
Yes, please.
Honestly, of all the readings and summaries I've heard of this chapter, I got to tell you the truth. Yours tonight was as powerful as I've ever heard from these verses. It opened my eyes, which these verses normally do, but the way you summarized it was, we really don't need to hear anything more. I mean, the examples are there, the spiritual master is there, and it's really all summarized in these verses. I mean, I appreciate tonight more than all the other readings, and not that I haven't appreciated the other ones, but tonight was spot on. I don't know if it's in my emotional state here, or I've been longing to justify these emotions like this, like you're saying, because we have to think about the departure. Now that's, the most important moment in our lives, and the examples are there. So I really appreciate the way you summarized everything tonight.
Thank you, Prabhu. I appreciate you saying that. So the thing is the emotions. Bhakti means love. Love is an emotional state. Okay. Sahaja means artificial emotions, doing for a show. But real devotional emotion is desirable. If you read the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it describes all of the emotions that you could have in relationship to Krishna. And it's literally all the emotions that exist. And how to perfect those emotions by attaching them to Krishna. If you use these emotions for nonsense, you will receive nonsense in return. Or here it's stated, nescience. In other words, ignorance, darkness. That's what you get. You get more confusion. You're depending on another material body to save you, and that body is already in the jaws of the serpent, just like you are. How are they going to save you? They're being swallowed by the snake of Kala, time. How are they going to save you? These are called fallible soldiers. There's no government, there's no army, there's no powerful person. Krishna performed activities that are unparalleled, unprecedented in the history of the world, bar none. Jesus Christ, he also raised the dead. Indra raises the dead. The great demigods can raise the dead. Jesus walked on the water. He could have power over all of these things because he was endowed with all of the mystic siddhas, the perfections, because he was a pure devotee of God. And if you follow in his footsteps, he said you could even do greater works than he. Those are the words of Christ Jesus. So whether you're a Christian, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Jew, we don't care. This is called Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma, eternal function of every soul. It doesn't take a birth. It doesn't die. It didn't come into being. It doesn't leave. It will always be here. It's eternal. It's eternal truth. It shines forevermore. Krishna comes again and again and again and again. He sends his servants constantly to remind you that you belong to him, that your life is designed to serve him only, and that you should develop a very strong emotional attachment to the Lord. So in this next chapter, Arjuna said that his mouth and his lotus-like heart had completely dried up because he was remembering the Supreme Lord. In his absence, he had lost all his bodily luster. He didn't even have any bodily luster. He couldn't even utter a word in reply. He was choked up. When Yudhisthira had all these questions for him, he couldn't even answer. And then he goes into a recitation of all these wonderful things Krishna had done for him while he was here. And it says, with great difficulty, he checked the tears of grief that were smearing his eyes. He was distressed because Krishna was out of his sight. And it made his affection for Krishna increase more and more and more and more. This is in two different verses, in two different chapters. It says that because Krishna was gone from his vision, his affection grew more and more and more. So separation is very, very important. So we don't want to discount separation, because when we're away from the beloved and then we're reunited, that's the happiest moment. You can see that, when these people are now coming back from this war that's going on and they finally reunited with their parents. He said, I'll never let you out of my sight again. Never will I let you go again. You see, these emotions are real, and they're meant to be directed towards the supreme soul, the soul of your soul, the life of your life. So it says that while he was remembering Krishna and his benedictions, his intimate familiar relationships, his chariot driving, Arjuna was overwhelmed and breathing very heavily. He began to speak. Try to imagine how these people were affected at this time. This is real life. This is a real story. This is people who had lost everything. The people Krishna now left. Could you imagine how they must be feeling? He said, I've just lost him whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void, like bodies without life. What? So we're feeling all vacant in the world without the presence of our spiritual master. We just had his disappearance day not too long ago. And then we're losing our devotees, like we just lost our dear God brother Charodeshna And Charadeshna is even mentioned in this story as Krishna's chieftain's son. Charadeshna was a chieftain. He was a son of Krishna in this world. And Charadeshna Das, my dear godbrother, had just left to go back home, back to Godhead. So all of these personalities preparing themselves to go back home, back to Godhead, right? And so Arjuna goes through this very long, detailed list about how he was able to shoot the arrow through the eye of the fish and win Draupadi's hand, how he, had so many different activities with Krishna that he goes through here. He said all of his strength had left his body. And he was even defeated by just ordinary people, even though he had the same Gandiva bow and the same arrows, right? He was defeated because Krishna had left and Arjuna's power was removed. So he goes through this you got to read this again. These are like verses, they go up to about verse 30. You should read these and the purports that blow your mind. We're going to run out of time, so I won't go into all the details about what Arjuna is talking about here. But he's talking about how he went to the heavenly planets, how he was offered a half-elevated seat amongst the demigods and King Indra, how even Indra took shelter of his prowess that was given to him by Krishna, right? So one point we gotta take into consideration. Okay, so when Krishna leaves, right, he leaves in his self-same body, right? But Krishna, it says that he's changing dress from one incarnation to the next. He's in all animals. He's the monarch in all species. And he takes unlimited births, like in the material world, like when he appeared before Devaki and in the prison house, he appeared as Narayan with 4 arms. And then he manifested himself in the 2-arm form and then became a small baby. So it's an immaculate conception. It's not the type of blood and bone and mucus and marrow and tissue, semen, all these fluids excreting. It's nothing like that. Krishna's above that. So Krishna says, Avajananti mang mudha, manusham tanam ashritam, param bhavam ajananto, mama budva maheshvaram. What does that mean? That means fools deride me when I descend in my human form. Fools deride me when I descend in my human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Mama Bhutva Maheshvaram, Maheshvaram, right? Supreme dominion over everything. That's Krishna. So anyone who doesn't understand this pastime of Krishna leaving is obviously a fool. So what does Arjuna have to say about that? When Arjuna is present with Krishna, right? What does he say? Arjuna says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam, Purusham, Shashvatam Divyam, Adidevam Ajam Vibhum. And that means that you are the supreme Brahman. You are the supreme abode. You're the supreme purifier. You're the absolute truth. You're the eternal divine person. You are the primal God. Transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. All the great sages, Narada, Sita, Devala, and Vyas proclaim this of you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. This is when Krishna revealed his universal form to Arjuna, right? So he showed himself as God. Where else did he do that? Anybody know where else he showed himself? Now, he did show in the prison house. We just said that, right? Vasudeva and Devaki. He showed his supreme manifestation, the supreme personality of Godhead. Do you know where else he did it? Right?
On the battlefield.
On the battlefield. Okay. All right. Yes, he did. All right. So, yeah, well, Krishna showed Arjuna his universal form, right? And then also to Mother Yasoda, when she was getting the dirt out of his mouth, she saw God, a universal form, in the baby's mouth, right? And I'm sure there's other incidents of that we could describe. But so Krishna does not take a birth or a death. You just like it says, Najayate Mriyate Vakada Chin. Nayam Bhavita Vana Bhuya. Ajo Nitya Shashvato Yang Parano. Nahanyate Hanyamane Sarire. Hanyate Hanyamane means that he's eternal, he's undying, he's primeval. There's no death for Krishna. He's not coming down here because he got bad karma like we do. Coming down here to try to cheat God out of his position. That's why we're here. That's called sin. The wages of sin is death. Is there anyone free from death here? No. So Krishna says, when he talks about Vasamsi Jirnani Yata Vihaya Navani Grinati Naro Parani, he says, as a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones. Similarly, the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. But Krishna doesn't do that. He's not subjected to that. But he changes his dress according to the incarnation, time, place, and circumstance. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is full of those wonderful, wonderful stories. So that's why we're making a study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're very grateful that everybody is here with us tonight to hear the Bhagavatam. But do not be a miscreant. Do not be grossly foolish. Just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 7:15, Namang duskritano mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya pritagyana usuram bhavamashritah. Those miscreants are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender to me. So everyone else then should surrender to Krishna, right? Unless we want to be mudha, right? Foolish. So that's not the goal of our lives, and that's not what our study is about, is how to not be foolish and how to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his fullness. And all of these instructions and stories are here to do that. So Arjuna says, he says in text 27 of chapter 15, he said, now I am attracted to those instructions that were departed to me by Sri Krishna, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Guys, it don't get any better. I mean, I'm not sure there's anything better than that. So we need to meditate on these instructions. We need to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajanas, of the great Mahatmas, like Bhishma, and who had died on the bed of arrows, and listen to all these wonderful prayers of the great souls who are protected by the Lord. It said, Arjuna said they put everything they had against him. All these great, never been defeated teachers, soldiers who had all these weapons given by the demigods, who had these mantras, who had unbelievable power. They threw everything they had at Arjuna. And Arjuna said they couldn't touch a hair on his head. Couldn't touch a hair on his head. So you want to take shelter of Sri Krishna, like Arjuna did, right? So you want to become deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of Krishna, which were imparted to Arjuna in the intimacy of friendship. So Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion. And as a result, all of the trash that was in his brain, that was in his thoughts, it all subsided. So we're going to become frustrated by our efforts to live forever in a material world that's filled with death. We're going to be frustrated. Not going to happen. We're going to lose everything we got. It all belongs to Krishna. So what do? We engage ourselves in the constant remembrance of the lotus feet of the Lord, and our devotion will increase at every moment. And then the trash that fills these brains, right? That's on every billboard. It's our mantra. We're going down the street. Oh, just smoking this thing will bring me great pleasure. Doing this will bring me happy. If I simply eat at Joe's, I'll finally be happy. If I could just drive that car, wouldn't that satisfy all my goals? Oh, that woman is more beautiful. Let me get her. Let me leave this woman. Let me get this. Come on. None of that is going to work out. None of it's going to work out. And we're going to be find ourselves empty-hearted, and we're going to remember at the end of our lives all of this nonsense unless we fix our mind on Krishna. Follow these great sages, these great saintly kings. Follow these personalities that entered the kingdom of God in self-same body, and you too can follow in their footsteps and achieve that same type of perfection. It starts out with chanting Hare Krishna. And no matter what your condition is, never stop chanting. No one can take it from you. It doesn't cost anything. It's the name of God. God will come. He's left signs everywhere trying to get your attention, right? Everywhere you look, there's a sign from God. They said, dear God, send me a sign. Have you been waiting on a sign? Well, when I saw Rangavati put out the promotion for the class, I thought, there's your sign. Come and hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. You've been waiting for a sign. Here it is. Guys, y'all are a lot of fun. And I know we could go on and on and on and on. The next chapters are going to be how Pariksit received the age of Kali, which is pretty dramatic. So I think you're going to want to be here for that one for sure. And I think Rangavati will send out that. And also the last class that we just had, somehow or another, I didn't get it out last time. So I'm going to send it out tonight. Rangavati will publish that one, and then we'll do this one as well. There's so much more to be said, so little time to say it. Thank you all for being here with us. We're very, very happy to have you. If there's any questions or anything you ever need, all you got to do is give me a call. We'll find it. If we don't know the answer, we'll call someone who does. Okay. There he is, the man himself. Haribo, there he is, the big guy. All right. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you guys being here. If there's no further questions, I should probably end this class because we're at 8:20 right now. Is that okay? With your permission?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for being here so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for enlightening us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And be here for the next one. We'll be ready to go. We'll talk about how Maharaj Pariksit dealt with Kali. It's a good story.
Yes.
All right. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh.